What if I told you that the fairy tale you thought you knew as a child was actually a story about murder, betrayal, and psychological manipulation? The Golden Bird isn't just a whimsical tale about a magical creature. It's a disturbing narrative that reveals the darkest corners of human nature. Tonight, we're peeling back the innocent veneer of this Brothers Grimm classic to expose the sinister truths hidden within. From sibling rivalry that turns deadly to the exploitation of the vulnerable, this story contains themes so dark that they'll change how you see fairy tales forever. Welcome to Sinister Stories. Subscribe and comment your favorite dark topic you'd like us to explore next. The story begins with what appears to be a simple theft. Someone is stealing golden apples from the king's prized tree. But look closer, and you'll see this isn't about fruit at all. It's about a father who willingly sends his children into mortal danger for the sake of his own greed and vanity. The king doesn't need those golden apples. He's already wealthy beyond measure. Yet he's willing to sacrifice his sons' lives to protect his precious possessions. This isn't parental love. It's narcissistic obsession with material wealth that values objects over human life. When the eldest son volunteers to guard the tree, he falls asleep and fails. The second son suffers the same fate. But here's where the story gets truly sinister. Instead of recognizing that this task might be impossible or supernatural, the king allows his youngest son to attempt what his brothers could not. He's essentially feeding his children to whatever force is stealing his apples one by one. The youngest son succeeds in wounding the golden bird, but rather than being satisfied with protecting his tree, the king becomes consumed with possessing the creature that dared to touch his property. This escalation reveals the true darkness at the story's heart. A parent who views his children as expendable tools for acquiring more wealth and power. What kind of father sends his sons on increasingly dangerous quests, knowing that each mission becomes more perilous than the last? The king doesn't just want the golden bird. He wants the golden horse that can catch it, and then the beautiful princess who owns the horse. His demands grow with each success, revealing an insatiable hunger that will never be satisfied no matter how much his sons sacrifice. The relationship between the three brothers exposes one of humanity's most primal and destructive emotions, sibling rivalry taken to its logical, horrifying conclusion. The eldest and middle sons don't just resent their youngest brother's success, they actively plot his destruction. When the youngest brother returns with not just the golden bird but also the golden horse and the princess, his older brothers don't celebrate his achievement. Instead, they see his success as their own failure, their own diminished worth in their father's eyes. This isn't healthy competition. It's a toxic dynamic where one person's victory necessarily means another's defeat. The brothers' solution is chilling in its premeditation. They don't act in a moment of passion or anger. They plan their betrayal carefully, waiting for the perfect moment when their brother is vulnerable and trusting. They throw him into a deep well, leaving him to die, then claim his accomplishments as their own. This betrayal cuts deeper than simple murder. They steal not just his life but his identity, his achievements, and his rightful place in their father's affections. They force him to watch from the darkness as they receive the praise and recognition that should have been his. What makes this even more disturbing is how easily the king accepts this version of events. He doesn't question how his two older sons suddenly became capable of feats they'd previously failed to accomplish. He doesn't investigate his youngest son's disappearance. This suggests either willful blindness or worse, that he simply doesn't care which son succeeds as long as his desires are fulfilled. The brothers' actions reveal how jealousy can transform family bonds into instruments of destruction. They would rather see their brother dead than acknowledge his superiority. They would rather live a lie than face their own inadequacy. The youngest brother's survival and eventual rescue do not represent a happy ending. They represent the complete destruction of familial trust and the loss of innocence that can never be recovered. When he climbs out of that well, he's no longer the naive, trusting young man who set out on his father's quest. He's learned that the people who should love and protect him are capable of the ultimate betrayal. His brothers, who shared his childhood, who knew his fears and dreams, were willing to murder him for personal gain. His father, who should have noticed his absence and investigated, was content to accept a convenient lie rather than seek the truth. The story forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality about family dynamics. that blood relations don't guarantee love, loyalty, or even basic human decency. The bonds we assume are unbreakable can shatter under the pressure of jealousy, greed, and competition. When the youngest brother finally reveals the truth and exposes his brother's crimes, there's no emotional reconciliation. There's no forgiveness or healing. The brothers are simply punished and life moves on. But the damage to the family unit is irreparable. Trust, once broken by betrayal this profound, cannot be restored. The tale suggests that some wounds cut too deep to heal, some betrayals too severe to forgive. The youngest brother may have won his father's recognition and the princess's hand, but he's lost something far more precious: the ability to trust the people closest to him. He's learned that love can be conditional, that family bonds can be weapons, and that success can make you a target for those who claim to care about you most. This transformation from innocent trust to hard-earned wisdom comes at a price that no victory can truly compensate for. The golden bird itself represents one of the most disturbing themes hidden within fairy tales: the romanticization of imprisonment and ownership of sentient beings. This isn't just any bird. It's described as intelligent, magical, and capable of making choices. Yet the entire story revolves around capturing and caging this magnificent creature for human pleasure and profit. Think about what the golden bird actually represents. It's a free, wild creature that chose to take the king's apples. It made a decision, acted on it, and lived with the consequences. But instead of respecting its autonomy, the humans in the story see it as nothing more than a beautiful object to be possessed. The bird's golden feathers aren't just decorative, they're literally valuable. The creature has been reduced to a source of wealth, its worth measured not by its intelligence or magical abilities, but by how much money its body parts can generate. This commodification of a sentient being reflects humanity's historical tendency to reduce others to their economic value. When the youngest son finally captures the golden bird, he doesn't question whether he has the right to imprison it. He doesn't consider that the bird might have family, friends, or a life of its own that he's destroying. He simply accepts that because he can catch it, he has the right to own it. The story presents this capture as a victory, a happy ending. But from the bird's perspective, it's the beginning of a life sentence in a golden cage. No matter how beautiful or comfortable that cage might be, it's still a prison. The bird's freedom, its ability to soar through the sky and make its own choices, has been permanently stripped away for human entertainment. What makes this even more sinister is how the story normalizes this imprisonment. There's no suggestion that the bird suffers in captivity or longs for freedom. It's presented as content with its fate, as if being owned by humans is somehow preferable to living free. This narrative serves to justify the subjugation of the powerful by suggesting they're better off under human control. Perhaps the most heartbreaking character in the entire story is the fox, a being who was once human, transformed into an animal by magic, and forced into servitude to break his curse. His situation reveals the story's darkest commentary on power, desperation, and the price of redemption. The fox isn't helping the youngest son out of kindness or friendship. He's trapped in a supernatural contract that requires him to serve others until someone follows his instructions perfectly and helps him regain his human form. This isn't voluntary assistance. It's magical slavery with the promise of eventual freedom. Consider the fox's position. He possesses wisdom, intelligence, and magical knowledge far beyond any human character in the story. He understands the true nature of the challenges ahead and has the power to overcome them. Yet he's bound by forces beyond his control to serve someone he barely knows, someone who has done nothing to earn his loyalty or respect. The fox's transformation back into human form comes only after he's proven his usefulness to the human characters. His freedom isn't granted out of compassion or recognition of his inherent rights. It's a reward for successful service. This establishes a disturbing precedent that suggests beings must earn their freedom through labor and obedience. Even more troubling is how the story treats the fox's human identity. When he transforms back into a prince, we learn he was nobility before his curse. This reveals that his servitude wasn't just magical bondage, it was a form of social degradation, forcing someone of high status to serve those beneath his original station. The fox's gratitude toward the youngest son for breaking his curse masks the fundamental injustice of his situation. He shouldn't have to be grateful for receiving what should never have been taken from him in the first place. His freedom, his dignity, and his human form were his by right, not gifts to be earned through service to others. The princess in this tale represents perhaps the most complex example of the story's themes of ownership and false freedom. She's presented as a prize to be won rather than a person with agency, desires, and rights of her own. Her supposed willingness to leave with the youngest son masks a more sinister reality about consent and coercion. When we first encounter the princess, she's already a captive, owned by whoever possesses the golden horse. She has no say in who claims her or where she goes. Her fate is entirely dependent on the outcome of transactions between men who view her as property to be traded. The story suggests that the princess is happy to leave with the youngest son, but we must question whether her consent is genuine or simply the result of having no better alternatives. She's not choosing between freedom and captivity. She's choosing between different forms of captivity, different owners who will determine her fate. Her attachment to the golden horse reveals the psychological complexity of her situation. The horse isn't just her possession. It's her only constant companion, perhaps the only being in her life over whom she has any control. When she's forced to part with it, she's losing the last vestige of her autonomy and identity. The youngest son's decision to retrieve both the horse and the princess might seem romantic, but it actually reinforces the story's commodification of both beings. He's not rescuing the princess from captivity. He's ensuring that his new possession comes with all her original accessories intact. The story's ending, where the princess presumably marries the youngest son and lives happily ever after, glosses over the fundamental issue of her agency. We never learn what she wanted for her own life, what dreams or ambitions she might have had beyond being someone's wife and prize. Her happiness is assumed rather than demonstrated, her consent taken for granted rather than genuinely obtained. This treatment of the princess reflects broader cultural attitudes about women as objects to be won, possessed, and traded between men. Her beauty and desirability are her only valued traits, and her worth is measured entirely by how much men are willing to sacrifice to possess her. The story presents this objectification as romance, but the underlying reality is far more disturbing. So there you have it. The Golden Bird is not the innocent children's story we thought we knew. It's a dark mirror reflecting humanity's capacity for betrayal, our tendency to commodify others, and our willingness to justify imprisonment and exploitation when it serves our purposes. This tale forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about family dynamics, power structures, and the true cost of success. It shows us how jealousy can transform love into hatred, how greed can make parents sacrifice their children, and how society normalizes the ownership of sentient beings when they're beautiful or valuable enough. The youngest son's victory comes at an enormous price, not just for himself but for everyone around him. The golden bird loses its freedom, the fox endures years of servitude, the princess becomes a prize rather than a person, and the family bonds are shattered beyond repair. These aren't unfortunate side effects of the story. They're the foundation upon which the entire narrative is built. Perhaps most disturbing of all is how the story presents these dark themes as normal, even desirable. The capture of magical beings is celebrated as achievement. The betrayal between brothers is resolved through punishment rather than healing. The princess's lack of agency is disguised as romance. These fairy tales weren't just entertainment for children. They were instruction manuals for society, teaching us what to value, how to treat others, and what constitutes a happy ending. When we look at the Golden Bird through this lens, we begin to understand how stories shape our understanding of right and wrong, power and weakness, love and possession. The real horror isn't that these themes exist in an old fairy tale, it's that they still resonate today. We still live in a world where family members betray each other for personal gain, where beautiful beings are reduced to objects of possession, and where freedom is treated as something that must be earned rather than a fundamental right. The Golden Bird remains relevant not because it's a charming relic of the past, but because it reveals truths about human nature that we're still grappling with today. It shows us the monsters we're capable of becoming when we prioritize our desires over others' rights. our success over others' well-being, and our satisfaction over others' freedom. These dark themes hidden in fairy tales make you think differently about the stories that shaped our childhood, don't they? It's fascinating how narratives we accepted as innocent entertainment actually carried such complex and disturbing messages about power, family, and human nature. What other fairy tales do you think might be hiding dark secrets beneath their surface? Have you ever noticed disturbing patterns in stories that were supposed to teach children about morality and happiness? Drop a comment below and let us know which dark fairy tale analysis you'd like to see next. Should we explore the psychological horror hidden in Cinderella's family dynamics? Or maybe uncover the disturbing power structures in Beauty and the Beast? Don't forget to subscribe to Sinister Stories for more deep explorations into the stories that shaped our world. We're here every week, peeling back the innocent veneer to reveal the darker truths hiding underneath. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most important lessons come from questioning the stories we've always been told to accept without thinking.